Everybody, my name is Deborah Byrne from DBpsychology Services, known across social media as DBpsychology. Now, this week's, good morning everybody. I'm using the new Facebook Live, which is, a bit unsettling when you're using something new for the first time. So just bear with me this morning. I apologise. I've had a couple of false starts. So I'll start again for the third time. You didn't see those other two times. But my name is Deborah Byrne from DBpsychology Services, known across social media as DBpsychology. Apologies. Hoping now at this stage it is definitely live. So I want to talk about building compassion into your life. This was the topic for this week's blog. It went out last Monday. As always, my blogs go out every Monday morning about 10 o'clock. And I think it's a very valuable topic to discuss at this moment in time, given what's going on. A lot of people would say that they have compassion for others. But do you have compassion for yourself? And I would argue with you that if you are not self-compassionate, if you do not have some self-compassion, then how can you be fully and more deeply compassionate with others if you are not compassionate with yourself? So compassion always has to start from ourselves. Some people say that it is a virtue. Others say it's an essential life skill, and I am in that category. I feel that it is an essential life skill and one that we can learn at any time. It's something that we can learn at any time, and it allows us to be more open-minded, of course, to be more tolerant of ourselves first off and of others, and to learn from our mistakes and not beat ourselves up. It allows us to celebrate even the smallest of wins and to accept those. And I've talked about this before. When we accept the smaller wins and we celebrate them, we are more likely to boost our motivation, our productivity, and to boost our willpower, and to generally, be feeling a lot better and more positive in ourselves, to be less stressed, to be less anxious. Again, if we're learning from our mistakes and not beating ourselves up, we're going to be like that too. That's a knock-on effect of less stress, less anxiety, less depression and things like that. And we know from research that compassion, it fires up a part of the brain that builds more empathy, or with ourselves and others, gives us a better understanding of ourselves, first and foremost, but then we can attach that then to others as well, to stop and think before we react, and we can be more understanding of others. And it also activates, the same part of the brain activates being more positive, being seeing more positivity in our lives. It doesn't mean that we're not going to see the negatives. It doesn't mean that we're not going to be able, we won't have ups and downs in our lives. Everybody has that. We're not talking about a Pollyanna kind of situation here. What we're talking about is, accepting that the bad happens as well as the good. And a lot of the time when we focus too much on the negative, we fail to see, in fact, what is positive and what is good in our lives. And to have empathy for ourselves when times are tough. And that's part of being compassionate. So the benefits of all that then is when we practice self-compassion, which is our starting point, it does reduce our stress and our anxiety and our depression and other mental health illnesses. It really does help with those illnesses. And it also helps us to quieten the mind, and I'll come on to why it does that in a little while. So therefore we're more peaceful, we're more calm, we're serenity, we have better serenity, which, believe me, when you gain serenity, you do not want to give it up. You really don't want to ever give serenity up. You have a clearer picture of your inner self, and your communication with your inner self and who you are and what you want and need is much clearer, and you are less critical, and you are less likely to procrastinate or catastrophize or have thought distortions. It's not that you won't have them, but they won't be prolonged. You'll be able to handle them a lot better, and you'll be able to look at them for what they are and deal with them better. And therefore you'll have a deeper relationship with yourself, and thus have a deeper relationship with others. And also, part of compassion means that we are self-forgiving. If we do make a mistake, we realise we don't have to beat ourselves up, and we're likely to forgive ourselves much more quickly. And that can be very hard for people, because a lot of the times we can forgive another, but we fail to recognise our part in it, and we fail to forgive ourselves. So having self-compassion will aid us in that. It's a good tool for this. Practicing self-care, of course, and I'm going to come on to that. I'm going to talk about self-care. And then also, as a result, we'll be more resilient, and I've talked about resilience building there not that long ago, so there's a full blog on that and a video about it. And to handle our emotions, we're recognizing our thought patterns, we're handling our thought patterns better, as I said, but we're also handling then, as a result, our emotions better. We're handling our reactions better, and we're more likely to be more proactive rather than reactive. And therefore, we're making a more fuller contribution to society as a whole. So they're just some of the benefits that we can talk about. To say all that though, just going to draw a line there for 1 second and just say, if you are, and particularly at this time, if you find yourself extremely stressed, if your anxiety levels have gone up and they're very bad, you're feeling burnt out, you're feeling depressed, or you feel there's something else wrong, I would always, I'll just recommend, please speak to a professional like myself. Don't forget, you can self-refer. Speak to your GP. The GPs are still there. They're not all just handling what's going on at the moment. They are still there for emergencies. Emergency departments are still open. They are accepting people in. Please don't leave things, until it's too late. Look for help. So how do you basically learn self-care or self-compassion? And I'm going to talk about self-care. That's why it's come up. With this, I have to say, you have to have patience, give yourself time, because you're going to need to practice this. It's a skill. Self-compassion is a skill. It is not something you're born with, so it is a skill that you need to learn. And you can learn it. As I said, anybody at any stage of their life can learn this skill. You have to have patience with yourself. You are going to make mistakes. You're going to trip, you're going to trip up. You're going to, relapse. And therefore, part of being compassionate is to say, okay, I made a mistake. Today didn't go quite as I planned. No biggie. We're just going to go anew tomorrow. And that's okay. That's part of being compassionate. If you think you've made a mistake, you recognize you've made the mistake, you accept it, you apologize if that was needed, and you go, we're going to start again tomorrow, we're going to start again from right now, and you let that go. So patience and time and practice is going to be needed. It is a new skill. So the 9 things that you need to do to help you learn more self-compassion. First off, self-care. Always the foundation stone of any sort of change that we're going to make is to learn to look after ourselves again, and to put ourselves first, and to do our basics. So the basics of self-care, I've done a lot of blogs, a lot of podcasts, a lot of videos. They're all there, so do check them out. There's some basics. So you have to be looking after yourself. You have to be taking care of your basic needs, first and foremost. Secondly, we would want to build our healthy boundaries. So building our healthy boundaries allows us, with ourselves and with others, to review our priorities. So part of that is to review your priorities. So what's going on in your life? What's happening? What are you attempting to do? I always say do a brain dump it all down, look at what you're doing for others, and start to delete, to hand back, to delegate, and then to have a more realistic to-do list. So that's part of building a healthy boundary. Learning to say no and stopping the people pleasing is also about self-compassion and is also about building your healthy boundaries. Getting to know your values. Sometimes we don't even look at that. We just accept, we go through life and we don't even stop to think about what our values are and what we want as a human being and what our needs are. So part of building your healthy boundaries and part of building your new self-compassion for yourself is in fact to get to know yourself and to learn what you want and need, and to have what your values are, what your morals are. And, you know, it's not just about saying no to people. It's not just about stopping the people pleasing. It's about getting to know yourself and who you are. So I have a whole blog on that. And of course, there's more information about building healthy boundaries. There's a whole section in the new book with worksheets. So you can check that out in my shop at www.deborahbyrnespsychologyservices.com. Now, the next thing, I'm going to talk about it, meditation. I always talk about some form of meditation. Meditation will help you reduce the stress, of course, and your anxiety, but it also helps to calm the mind. And this is going to be a key. It's kind of one of the, like with self-care, it's going to be one of your foundation stones. And as far as I'm concerned, meditation is part of your foundation, your basic self-care. So this will help you to start listening to that inner voice, listening to, you know, your critic, the inner critic and that, and your thought patterns. And I'm going to come on to that in a little bit talk a bit more about that in a minute. But, you know, if you're already doing some yoga or Tai Chi, it doesn't have to be a sitting meditation. That's great. If you're doing mindful walking, that's great. Anything like that will help. If you do not have any sort of meditation practice at all, then I would suggest you start very simply, and I've talked about that, doing 3-minute breathers throughout the day and using a technique based around the 7-11 technique. Sometimes you can use a 4-6 technique, and that's okay. And again, go to the blog, this week's blog, and I have links out to a podcast which will teach you that, which will teach you those meditations. Number 4 is to be more self-accepting, and again, that is what I consider a foundation stone. When we can accept ourselves, we can review who we are. So again, we're going back to our building our healthy boundaries. We're reviewing who we are. We're letting go of the masks. We are seeing who is in our life, who is accepting, who is more positive in our life, and then, you know, letting go of the people pleasing and being able to strip away the masks and say, this is who I am, and it's okay. Who I am is okay. And to let go of those negative people, let go of the people that aren't supporting you. You need those 4 types of support I've spoken about in the support system. You need that, and you need those to be positive. They have to be positive. So letting go of negative people, deleting negative people, is all part of accepting yourself for who you are and building around a team around you that is positive and that you need. Number 5 then is journaling and gratitude, and that is all about getting it all out, getting it all down on paper, brain dumping what you need to out of your head, so that you can, again, you're getting to know yourself. You're using this as a tool to get to know yourself, to see those thought patterns, to review your priorities, but also to then as well write down at least 3 things every day that you're grateful for, so you start to see the positives. We want, you know, part of being self-compassionate is to also see the positive in our lives just as much as we see the negative, instead of, you know, veering off towards the negative too much. And again, there's a freebie on the website. I've put a lot of freebies up on the website. It's at the resources page. If you scroll down, there's no need to subscribe to anything. If you scroll down, you'll see them. There's a lot of new freebies going up, and I'm updating it on a regular basis. Every few days I try to put one or two articles up there with worksheets that you can download. So there is one on looking at different thought patterns and gratitude and fears and things like that. So do check those out. It's at www.deborahbyrnepsychologyservice.com, and it's /resources. So have a look at that page there. Number 6 is about learning to, manage your emotions more effectively. And so we are looking at who we are. We're accepting ourselves. We're using the journal to look at our thought patterns, to see what way we're thinking, whose negative thought that was originally. So we're going back to see who implanted that negative thought, that criticism in our head, and hopefully we're going to hand that back. And then we're going to look at our emotions that come out of that. Are those emotions being triggered by the past or by what's going on right now in our lives? So this will help you distinguish between the two. Do you need to work with somebody to help you with past traumas? Do you need, help right now with something that's going on in your life? But even if you don't, to become more aware of our thoughts and our feelings and to acknowledge them, even to become aware of them, is a first step. Now, there are 3 steps, in fact, before we actually take action. Action is the 3rd step. So the first step we need to do is become aware. So we're becoming aware of our thought patterns, becoming aware of the emotions that are being triggered, the situations that are coming up in our lives, and the thoughts and emotions that are being triggered there. And you tend to do it at the start when you're practicing all this. We tend to do that after the fact. So we tend to write about it after it has happened. But with practice and with, as I said, the basic self-care, with the meditation, you'll have slowed down enough that you're actually able to stop and think and really listen to what the other person is saying to you, or what's triggering you. Is something triggering you? You become more aware of what's happening with practice. But initially, at the start, you're going to need to write it all down. So becoming aware of those emotions, becoming aware of those triggers, and acknowledging them, and just simply accepting this situation, this person, this emotion is okay. This is how I'm feeling right now at this moment in time, and that's okay. That can be so empowering in and of itself. And then we can examine them, and say, okay, what is going on? As I said, what is going on? Is this about the past? Is it about the present? What's feeding into it? Do I need help? No, I can cope. Again, that's our action. Then we can start taking action once we've examined it. So then moving on, number 7, my tip is to practice self-forgiveness. Hard one, a really, really, really hard one. Again, if we're monitoring our thoughts, if we're seeing what's happening, if we're seeing if it's in the past, we're seeing our emotions, what's triggering us. If we can see what's going on, then we're more likely to be able to do something about it. We're more likely to be self-forgiving, and then decide, do we need to forgive the other person, or do we need an apology from the other person, or effectively ask, and use our I statements. And I'm going to come on to communicating more in a minute, but to be able to ask for an apology from somebody if you're aware what's going on, even if you've had to walk away and think about it and journal about it. At least you can write it down and go, no, that wasn't. We're setting a boundary. Then we can look at it and set a boundary and say, even then going back to the person and saying, I felt this way when something happened or you said something. If you can go back and then set a boundary with that person even after the event, and stand up for yourself and be more assertive in a positive way, and set that boundary. So you can see how we're linking it all in together. So again, with forgiveness, we're becoming aware of it. We're acknowledging how we're feeling, what our thought patterns are, what happened in the event, and we are becoming more compassionate with ourselves, so then we can take the action of self-forgiveness, and if need be, to forgive somebody else. And that's only if we want to. And I've talked about forgiveness before, so don't mix up forgiveness with reconciliation. As I've said before, forgiveness is only about yourself. It's only about you as an individual. It does not mean you have to be involved with the other person. It doesn't mean you have to even speak to the other person. Reconciliation is different. That involves the two people, and it involves the other person taking ownership of what they did and a genuine an apology, and sometimes that doesn't happen. So there is, I do have a blog on that as well, on forgiveness and what it means. So number 8 then, of course, is learning to communicate effectively, and there is a full blog on that, and there is also a freebie again on the resources page. But in this week's blog, I just list out some 4 steps that you can actually do just to get you started. But if you want more on using your I statements and all about how to communicate effectively and how to communicate if you're angry and what to do there, then do check out the blog, the full blog, at www.DBpsychologyservice.com, and it's called improving your communication skills in relationships. So have a look at that, and there are 4 key steps to get you started though in this week's blog. The last part in this number 9 is, of course, to build your support system in place. And I talked about this only a couple of weeks ago, and the 4 key supports that you need to get those in place. They need to be positive. I have to emphasize that they have to be positive, so we're deleting negative people. And do check out that video and check out the blog on that. So once we have self-compassion in place, or as we're putting a more healthy self-compassion in place, we can start being more compassionate with others. So I do, at the very end of the blog, I get you started on that, and I talk about I give you a few tips on that. I'm not going to go into it this morning, but if you have a look at this week's blog, you'll see that there are a few tips at the bottom on how to build compassion with others. But I would always say it is a skill you can learn, but you should start with yourself. So I'm going to leave it there this morning. And I will talk to you all again, of course, next Saturday morning at 10 o'clock. And thank you all to those, Deirdre and that, who have been watching this morning live, and to all those who watch in replay. As always, thank you very much. I know there's quite a few hundred people watching in replay every week, so thank you. And I will see you all again next Saturday morning, and do check out the blog on Monday morning at 10 o'clock. I think it's on, I can't actually quite remember what it's on because I write a few blogs ahead. I'm sorry. I write a few blogs ahead all the time, but I think it's one on relationships. I'm not sure. There is one on relationships coming up. So I'll leave it there. Thank you very much for listening, and goodbye.